Not sure who put the tree here, really. But yeah, that's where I just climbed through. Not fun. Not fun, really. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. And as you can see, I'm alone. And the reason why I'm alone is also already part of this video, because I want to give you guys a few updates on what has been happening in Thailand in my life. And one of the first and very important updates is that Thanh has finally a job. Yay! And that is honestly pretty cool. He has now a job as a salesperson, basically, in a supermarket nearby, not that far from us, luckily. And yeah, basically he will work in what's called a mini job in Germany. So a mini job is sorry, it's very muddy here. So a mini job is a job in which you can earn a maximum of 556 euro, I believe, starting from this year. Every year it gets a little bit more. And that translates to, I don't know, 8 to 10 hours or so per week, roughly, depending on the salary, of course. So the cool thing is, he has this mini job now, and that will obviously not just relax our finances a little bit, giving us hopefully a little bit more cash to work with per month, but also it will enable Thanh to learn German better and faster. Because of course right now the only real place where he actually studies German more or less intensively is in his school. And so yeah, obviously, I mean, we could talk to each other in German more, and we actually should do that too. However, in daily life, it's actually not that easy. A lot of times we just quickly need to talk about things, and we don't actually have that much time sometimes really together where we can talk about things. Despite the fact that I work at home and that Thanh is also at home a lot. But unfortunately, when I finish my work, Thanh needs to go to school, and then really in the evening is the only time that we actually usually have time to talk to each other. And so a lot of times we don't talk as much German as we should. So this job will definitely be a big advantage for that, because he will be forced to speak German there. And obviously he will learn a lot of vocabulary. And if it's just related to products and like food and drinks and whatever, it's definitely cool, I think. So that's the first news. And that's the reason why Thanh is not with me right now, because Thanh is actually working right now. Yeah, I hope that everything works out well with this job. He has 3 months of probation now, so within those 3 months I can kind of kick him out right away if something happens. But likewise, he could also just go within the 3 months without any kind of cancellation period also. But I think he will make it, really. He's probably doing a very good job, and I'm sure they're happy to have him. But you never know, there could be a colleague who doesn't like to work with him because of this lacking German skills. Or maybe they find it too tedious because of that or so. In terms of work, I cannot imagine there being any problem, but the language could be a problem. However, for now, they have been very, very tolerant and accepting, it seems. I mean, the guy who interviewed him took like, I don't know, spent like an hour with him or so, talking him through everything, and they seemed very open-minded and very friendly, so that's nice. And then the other news I wanted to share with you guys relates a bit to our general situation here in Germany. And I don't know if you have heard it. If you don't live in Germany, then probably not, because it's not such a big thing for people living outside of Germany, I guess. But the German government had been dissolved, so to say. I mean, the parliament is still there and it's still active until re-elections. But these re-elections will be happening tomorrow. That is probably today by the time you see this video. So on Sunday, February the 23rd. And this will be the election of the 21st German Parliament. Most parties in the German Parliament are pretty much the ones that you have been seeing here for ages. So there's, for example, a conservative one. There's one that's a bit more for like economics and companies and stuff, and very liberal and stuff like that. There's a green one, like in almost every country that has this kind of system. However, what makes this a bit special is the presence of one particular party, and that is the so-called AFD. And there's a person coming, so let me wait for a second. So why is the presence of the AFD such a special thing for us, really? It's really quite simple, because the AFD, at least in parts, is against people like Thanh and me. Partially because Thanh is a foreigner, and they don't specifically like foreigners so much. Basically, they refer to illegal immigrants, but this is not just, realistically speaking, this is usually not just limited to immigrants, as in like refugees or whatever, but usually also a bit wider. So many of the supporters of the AFD don't actually like foreigners at all. That's not true for everyone, I guess, but by and large, that's the general direction that most of the party's members are heading towards, really. And so, generally, the party and its supporters are not so much in favor of people like Thanh, because Thanh is a foreigner, and he obviously doesn't look very, European. So, yeah, that makes it a bit difficult. In addition, the AFD also is home to people like Andreas Gehlmann, for example, who has said some quite critical things once. I mean, arguably this is a very long time ago. This is like 2016, I think it was. There was a discussion in the parliament, and one person said, look guys, in Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria and whatever, people get discriminated against and they're not allowed to openly live their homosexuality, and some of them also end up in prison for that. And following that statement, this Mr. Gehlmann said something like, oh, this is something we should do in Germany too, which was interpreted by many as putting homosexuals in prison. Now he kind of made a statement like this. His reaction wasn't really geared towards the part putting them in prison, but towards the part, at least, preventing them from living out their homosexuality, whatever that really means. But basically publicly showing that they're homosexual, I guess, which is something that he seemingly is against that. Which, yes, I mean, it doesn't matter which one of those two sentences he really reacted to, but clearly this is definitely discriminating against LGBT people. And yeah, you've got a couple of people like that in the party. Funnily enough, the head of the party, or like the party's current candidate for being a chancellor, perhaps if the AfD has enough power, is herself a lesbian. And that's quite funny, because she leads a party that is, well, has the image at least of being against homosexuals and LGBT people, or at least being not particularly LGBT friendly. I think I need to be careful what I say here, but you get the idea. Basically, they're not the best friends of LGBT people, I would say. And so, why does this matter to me and Thanh? So, it is very unlikely that the AfD actually gets enough power in the German parliament to rule the country. That is because they need to have the absolute majority to do so, so above 50%. They were not gonna get 50%, they will get maybe around 20%, which is scary enough. And to be honest, I have been living in Vietnam for 10 years, and the AfD was already born, I think, by that time as a party, but it wasn't yet that strong. And so I come back after 10 years and bam, we've got this right-wing party which has a lot of people that say quite critical things, really. Like one court, for example, decided that one of their members, like a higher-up member, could be called a Nazi. So a National Socialist, in reference to the Nazis that we had here in Germany 100 years ago. And really, a lot of things that happen around this look very, very similar to the happenings around 100 years ago. So when people started to look for a common enemy, back in the days of Nazi Germany, those were mostly the Jews and all sorts of foreigners as well. And homosexuals also were not really liked that much in that time. And so the AfD, of course, cannot say certain things out loud very clearly, because nowadays that's what would be against the law. However, some of the members scratch always on the legality of things with this, and sometimes say things that are kind of clearly understood in which direction they go, even if they are still legal to say, if you get what I mean. And so, yeah, that's the AfD. Great. And they have now around 20% in the German of the German votes. That is fucking scary, to be honest. Really. Because if the AfD was in power ever and actually could really make decisions in the parliament, which means changing the laws and stuff, then we probably would have a lot less advantageous laws for Thanh and me, most likely. Or for people like Thanh and me, not just specifically for us too, but for everyone really who's not the traditional family, as in man, woman, children, working a normal job, whatever, being born in Germany, all of these things that I think most of the AfD people probably like much more than such a weird couple, like Thanh and me, for example, one of them German, one of them a foreigner, and both are gay, and yeah, well, you get the idea. We're not exactly the typical image of the tradition of family that people like the people in the AfD really have in mind. And so it's very likely that a lot of laws would not be in our favor. For example, things like same-sex marriage could be restricted again, maybe. Or there was a change for foreigners to get the German nationality quicker and to keep the second nationality, the original nationality. So if Thanh wants to become a German now, he can actually have the German passport and keep his Vietnamese one. That's pretty new. That wasn't possible in the past, but this could be something that they could change again, Stuff like this, basically. And overall, just the AfD is also not so friendly towards the EU and cooperating with other parties, and yeah, I don't think this will be a good thing, really. I don't think that anything good comes out of that. And so tomorrow are the elections. Every German basically can go to vote, and there are, I think, 29 parties or so to vote for, but realistically speaking, there's only about 6 or 7 that have the chance to go into the parliament, because we have like a 5% margin that they need to reach before they can even have seats in the parliament, with one exception, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, the AfD right now I think is the second strongest party in Germany. What? Or the third? I don't know. I think the surveys kind of differ a little bit, but basically it's one of the strongest parties in Germany. And that's crazy, really. What has happened to this country, and what has happened to Europe in general, actually? I mean, all these right-wing parties and opinions and everything kind of get more and more, I feel like. At least it has definitely gotten more in the last 10 years, and I find this scary, honestly. Because a lot of these things look so similar to what has happened 100 years ago, and who knows where that would lead, really. So yeah, apologies for going on about politics so much. To be honest, I really don't want to do that, but in our case, it does affect us most likely directly, or actually, I'm not sure if it would really affect us, but it does seem worrisome. There are people in the AfD that said negative things about homosexuals. And so, yeah, it seems kind of understandable to me that isn't exactly the party I want to see in power. And yet there are lots of people who support them, obviously. I mean, 20% is a fifth of the country. That's crazy. I mean, obviously these are just estimates. And then, of course, these are just people who can vote and all that and whatever. So there are limitations to this idea of 20%. It's not really 20%. But still, it's scary nonetheless, really. Yeah, so let's hope for the best. I will go to vote tomorrow, and we'll see what comes out of it and what kind of government we get. And where things go from here, really, no idea, to be honest. So, what do you think about all of this? Do you think that I might worry too much? Or do you have an idea how to improve things again, apart from obviously going to vote? Yes, that's something that Germans can do to change things, of course. But it doesn't really change public opinion. So, if you do have an idea how to adjust that, do let me know. I'm very happy to hear any ideas, really. And how is it in your own country? I know that many of you come from places where it's actually straightforward worse than in Germany. Where like you can't be who you want to be, where you cannot live freely, and where it's way, way more difficult than it is in Germany. And I know I'm kind of complaining or talking on a kind of privileged level here, but really, ultimately, that should be the level that's everywhere, where people can just be who they want to be, love who they want to love, and just be happy and free, really. That's, I think, what should be the case, honestly. Not just here, but everywhere. And for that, it might be important that the countries that do have this kind of freedom right now also keep it. And that this can be an example for others to follow, rather than the opposite, where like countries like Germany may go backwards again at some point. Who knows? So I don't know. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about this topic. And do wish Thanh good luck for his job. I think he will appreciate it. I think it's a big challenge for him. But I'm very proud of him that he is trying this, because it's certainly not easy to go into a job without many German skills, and I imagine it is kind of scary in a way, but he's brave. He just tries it, and I think he's very much looking forward to his first paycheck so he can buy things that he wants to buy without asking me for money. And yeah, I think it's going to be really good for him, honestly. And it's going to be good for us also that Thanh has, you know, a certain freedom financially as well, and doesn't only depend on me. And that's a good thing, really. Yeah, definitely. Plus, it also gives them chances to maybe meet new people, make new friends, and so forth. So really, there are a lot of positive things when it comes to him having a job, I think. So, thank you very much for listening to my ramble. I hope this was not too boring. There's some kids over there, so I'm trying not to go in this direction anymore. Anyway, I wish you guys a nice Sunday. Hope that you're all okay and that you stay safe. And see you in the next one. Bye!